By the end of 2025, I want to have every book that I own physically to be read because it only makes sense. If I read 100 books a year, there's no reason that that shouldn't be the case. Welcome back to my channel. Today's going to be a bit different than my normal vlogs because I'll be doing a bookshelf tour. I've been asked to do a bookshelf tour for a while, so I'm finally getting down to it. It's going to be like most of my content, mostly vibes. I'm just going to go through the shelves, let you guys know what I really loved, what I'm looking forward to, and somewhat how it's organized, which is mostly vibes as well, but let's get started. All right, so first up we've got like my sci-fi shelf somewhat. I adored Project Hail Mary by Indieware. It's one of my favorite books. I haven't quite gotten to The Unbroken or The Faithless by C.L. Clarke. Those are on my TBR, and I plan to read those really soon. Next month, I'm planning a buddy read for The Principle of Moments by Esme Chakemi Pearson with some friends. Just read Chain Gang All-Stars by Nana Kwame Adjei. If you want to know my thoughts on that one, I think it's the vlog before last. And for the stack in the middle, I've read the first 2 books in the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. Really enjoy Murderbot. I have yet to get to the 3rd one. I need to get to Clara and the Sun. I adored The Stardust Girl by Yumi Kitase, but I haven't read The Deep Sky yet. And I also need to get to The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson and The Last Hour Between Worlds by Melissa Caruso, but I've heard really good things about both of those. At the very top, I've got a collection of short stories by Ken Liu, The Hidden Girl and Other Stories. And at the very top, I've got a novella by Rebecca Roanhorse, Tread of Angels. Haven't gotten to that just yet either. And then all the way to the right, I loved The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez and the Between Earth and Sky series, starting with Black Sun, then Fevered Star and Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse is one of my favorite trilogies. So highly recommend that one. And right below it, this shelf is somewhat vibes. It's some of my favorite books as far as fantasy and mythology, as well as just the dust jackets are super pretty, so that's why I put these together. But all the way to the left, we've got The Priory of the Orange Tree and A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. These are the first 2 books in the Roots of Chaos series, and I adore both of them. They're like my children, so I can't choose between the 2, but I really love the motherly vibes of A Day of Fallen Night so much in those characters. On the left, I've got my Fairyloot edition of Immortal by Sulin Tan. This is set in the same world as the Celestial Kingdom duology, and it's also about mythology. It follows the god of war. At the very bottom of the stack in the middle, I've got the Elements of Cadence duology by Rebecca Ross, A River Enchanted, and A Fire Endless. I adore this duology. I really appreciated how the fantasy elements are tied in with music. So spectacularly written. And in the middle, I've got Kaikeyi, as well as Goddess of the River, both by Vaishnavi Patel. These are both mythology retellings, feminist retellings, and I love her writing so much. And then at the very top, I've got the rest of the Celestial Kingdom duology with Daughter of the Moon Goddess, Heart of the Sun Warrior, and Tales of the Celestial Kingdom by Sulin Tan. I adore the mythology about Chang'e and Hoi, so I really appreciated the elements that were added to this story as well. To the right, we've got my favorite read of 2024, The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. There's nothing that I can say about that book. You just have to read it. You have to go in somewhat blind, but it is such unique storytelling, and I will think about that book for the rest of my life. Next to that one, I've got the Illumicrate edition of Water Moon by Samantha Soto-Yambao. This was such a unique story. It takes place in modern-day Japan, but it is literally Spirited Away meets Through the Looking Glass. Such a unique story. Highly recommend. And on the right, I've got my beautiful Page and Wick edition of The Sword of Kaigen. Please check the trigger warnings if you're going to read this book. This is a hard one. It's heart-wrenching, but it is also a beautiful story, and I love Emma Wong. And right next to my buddies, Chistery from Wicked and Cyborg from Justice League, I've got a couple of books that I haven't quite gotten to, and that is Sorcery of Small Magics by Mai Gadusi, as well as The God and the Kohimo by Sophie Kim. These are both special editions. I couldn't tell you from what subscription box at the top of my head, but they're absolutely stunning. I had my mind blown by The Will of the Many by James Islington, as most of us who have read it have, and I cannot wait for The Strength of the Few that comes out later on this year. I have Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I enjoyed the first book so much, and I really liked the second book as well, but the third book wasn't my favorite, and that's why I have just the one edition here, because I'm limited on space. So we're going to put the books that I love on the shelves, but looking forward to that movie, even though there's been a lot of controversy about the casting, but we'll talk about that on a different vlog. In this middle stack, I've got my Robin Hobb collection with some Ken Liu at the top, but I've got the Farseer trilogy, Assassin's Apprentice, Royal Assassin, and Assassin's Quest. Adore. I would fight for Fitz. Fitz is my third child, and anybody that has an issue with Fitz chivalry has an issue with me. Next month, I'm also getting to the Live Ship Traders trilogy with Ship of Magic, Mad Ship, and Ship of Destiny. I've heard that these are equally as good, just in very different ways, and I'm really looking forward to finding out what that means. And then at the very top, I've got The Paper Menagerie, a collection of short stories by Ken Liu. Now onto the right side of the shelves, I've got some of my favorites. I've read all but one of these 5. So I adored The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern and The Starless Sea by her as well. These were both in my top 10 reads of 2024. I really enjoyed The Beautiful Ones by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. She's one of my favorite authors. And Gods of Jade and Shadow is my favorite book of hers. I just love the mythology elements, the pantheon. So good. And I haven't gotten to The Seventh Veil of Salome by her just yet. And as we go through this tour, you're going to see some books that are faced the opposite way, and that's because I ran out of space on my shelf of shame. These are my books of shame, and they just happen to be next to books that I adore, so just act like they're not there. But right here, I've got Evil Eye by Ataf Ram. This is a much needed story. It's about a Palestinian woman dealing with her family dynamics and the expectations that come with it. Such an important read. Next to that, I need to get to As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zulfa Katu. I've heard that this is a heart-wrenching, very important story. I think it's about Syria. Need to get to that one. I also need to get to Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. This is my only Sally Rooney book. I don't know if this is the right place to start with her work, but this is where I'm starting, getting to that really soon as well. And then on the right, I've got some YA as well as some books that are set in Japan that I really enjoy. So I loved Six Crimson Cranes and The Dragon Promise. That's a duology by Elizabeth Lim. Her Radiant Curse, the book right above that, is a spin-off of that duology, and it's a prequel. And I just love how seamlessly these 3 stories go together. And of the 3, I have to say Her Radiant Curse is my favorite. In the middle, I've got A Crane Among Wolves by June Her. This is set in 16th century Korea. Don't quote me on that. I might be off by 100 years. But this is such a good story. There's a mystery. It's about taking down a tyrannical emperor. And it kind of feels like a K-drama with everything that's going on. But it's also set on factual events. Such a good read. In the middle, I've got my standard edition of Watermoon by Samantha Soto Yombao. And at the very top, I've got the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. Adore this series. It's about it's 2 magical cafes in Japan and how you can travel to the past to see loved ones. And then on the far right, I've got The Jade Settler of Jan Loon. This is set in the Greenbone Saga world. Back to the top, my poor knees. Right here, I've got one of my favorite shelves in my collection. It's all of my Black authors that I adore and would love to meet someday. At the very bottom of the stack on the left, I've got Legendborn and Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn. In just one day, I'll be starting my reread of those 2 books to prepare for Oathbound, which comes out on March 4th. Looking forward to that, but it's Black Girl Magic, Secret Societies, Dark Academia, and Arthurian Legend. All of my favorite things in one. And right above that, I've got my favorite series of all time. And this is the Broken Earth series by N.K. Jemisin with the 5th season, The Obelisk Gate, and The Stone Sky. It is dystopian, but it's such beautiful character work and such an intricately woven story with so much intention. You have to get to that if you haven't read it just yet. At the very top, I've got The City We Became and The World We Make by N.K. Jemisin as well. I have started The City We Became, but I just wasn't in the right headspace when I was reading it. I need to get back to that soon. And then at the very top, I've got Blood Child by Octavia Butler, as well as a collection of other stories in there. And in the middle, I've got my 7 stories editions of Parable of the Sower, Parable of Talents, and Fledgling by Octavia Butler as well. I've read Parable of the Sower twice so far, and I'm going to be reading Parable of the Talents really soon. Haven't gotten to Fledgling just yet. I've heard that that one's quite triggering, so I'm going to go in that very wary, but I know that it's such an important read. And I need to get to James by Percival Everett. I know that it won Book of the Year by the National Book Awards last year. So super excited to get to that. It's like a retelling of Huckleberry Finn from the perspective of Jim. And then on the right, I've got some more N.K. Jemisin and Octavia Butler. I have The Killing Moon and The Shadowed Sun, and those are both in the Dreamblood duology. Haven't read that just yet, but I did love the Inheritance trilogy with the 100,000 Kingdoms, the Broken Kingdoms, and the Kingdom of Gods, as well as 2 other novellas that went along with it. Such a good read. I feel like more people need to be reading the Inheritance trilogy. Really enjoyed that. I've got Kindred right above that by Octavia Butler. This is my favorite Octavia Butler book. And above that, I've got Lilith's Brood, and that's Dawn, Adulthood Rights, and Imago. Getting to that in 2025 for certain. I think I want to read all of Octavia's books this year because there's no reason why. One, that they've been on my shelves this long and I haven't read them, and there's just no reason that I haven't read them yet. It's unacceptable. And at the very top, I've got Never Whistle at Night, which is a collection of horror stories and short stories by Indigenous writers, so I'm excited to get to that. And then at the very top, I've got A Few Rules for Predicting the Future by Octavia Butler as well. And we've got another one of my favorite shelves. This is rfkuang / Some Dark Academia, and I just love the edition that I have in the middle. I think that's Fairy Loot. I've got like the dust jacket of the book on the left on another book, and then the book without the dust jacket in the middle, as well as this statue that I got, this figure that I got. I think it was in a Fairy Loot box, but I don't get Fairy Loot YA, so I bought it on Pango. But on the left, I've got the Poppy War trilogy, the Poppy War, the Dragon Republic, and the Burning God. This is based on historical events that happened in China, but with a different outcome than what happened in history. Such an important read, but please check the trigger warnings. That one is a lot. Next to that, I've got my special edition of Yellowface, but this edition, I might have to pull it out and show you guys. Hold on. This edition is the book that Juniper Song stole from Athena Lou in the book The Last Front. So I just love that little Easter egg and piece of the story in the real world. And to the right of Yellowface, I've got my favorite book, or one of my favorite books, Babel by rfkuang. This is Dark Academia, and it's about the importance of translation and the magic of translation. Such a unique story, but please check the triggers on this one as well. Honestly, check the triggers on all of rfkuang's writing. I've got 2 editions of Blood Over Bright Haven by M.L. Wong. On the left is the indie edition with Sayona on the hardcover. And after that one, I've got the traditionally published one next to that. I've also got If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. I am a fan of Shakespeare, but I wasn't sure how I'd feel about that one. I loved it. Next to that, I've got 2 copies of An Academy for Liars. One is the standard edition, and I've got the Evernight with a Lumicrate next to that one. This is Dark Academia, but they are studying the power of persuasion. Really appreciated the main character and everything that she was going through. And on the very right, I've got Dark Academia Meets Vampires with Immortal Dark by Tejas Gurma. I really appreciated how Ethiopian culture was woven into the history of this world and the lore of the vampires. Right below that shelf, I've got some more favorites on this one as well. All the way to the left, I've got The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. This is the only book in this series that I've read so far, but I want to catch up before The Dark Mirror comes out in March of this year. I haven't quite gotten to Ace of Spades, but I've heard that that's really good, so looking forward to reading that this year most likely. I read the Atlas 6 series last year. It's one of my favorites. I know, especially towards the end, that it's a divisive one, but I really appreciated the character study and I liked how it ended, even though it wasn't the most satisfying or hopeful conclusion. But I also love Olivie Blake's work, so I guess I'm probably biased. Speaking of Olivie Blake, in the middle, I've got One for My Enemy, which I've started but haven't finished yet. This is like Witches meets Romeo and Juliet, so I want to get to that soon, or complete that soon. I adored Alone with You in the Ether. Masters of Death was one of my favorite reads of last year, as well as January's. I really liked how those books are so similar in the ways that mythology is tied in. And at the very bottom, we've got the Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Muir. One of my favorites. I love Gideon, I love Harrow, and I love Nona. And I love the rest of the characters as well. This series is so spectacular, and I'm so looking forward to Electo and how it will be concluded whenever we get it. I can be patient. At the very top, I've got Pure Nessie by Susanna Clark. This is one of my favorite reads. I read this annually around the holidays, and I love it so much. At the very, very top, I've got Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. I need to knock that out in like a day. I don't know why I haven't read that yet. It's unacceptable. Reading that soon, maybe today. And then at the very top, I've got The Wood at Midwinter by Susanna Clark. Haven't quite gotten to that yet. And then all the way to the right, I've got Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. This is a tome. I did start this one, but I wasn't in the right headspace when I started it, so I plan to jump back into that one. But I've heard that it's like adjacent to Piranesi, so that's why I need to get to it. On the right of that, I've got a book that is on my February TBR, and that's Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. It is a story about an author and the sci-fi book that she writes and how it changes her world and worldview. And then on the very right, I've got 2 Donna Tartt books with The Goldfinch as well as The Secret History. I did start The Secret History. I was just reading too many books at the tail end of 2024. I need to get back to that one, but I really did enjoy what I read. This next shelf is a hodgepodge as far as genre, but all of the books that I've read on this shelf I absolutely adore. At the very top, I've got You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi. This is another divisive one because of Faye's decisions and who she chooses to love, but I wasn't mad at her. I loved how they bonded over grief. Underneath that, I've got A Love Song for Ricky Wilde and 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I don't read a lot of romance, but I will always pick up a Tia Williams book. I loved the magical realism and a nod to the Harlem Renaissance in A Love Song for Ricky Wilde, and I always adore a second chance romance, so that's why I love 7 Days in June. Right underneath that, I've got The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. This was found family, some cozy fantasy, and I really love that story and how she took those young witches under her wing. Underneath that, I've got Babylonia by Constanta Casati. Haven't gotten to that just yet, but I know that it's going to be spectacular. Underneath that, I've got Sing Me to Sleep and Drown Me with Dreams, both by Gabby Burton. I really enjoyed Sing Me to Sleep, and I don't know what I'm waiting for to get to Drown Me with Dreams, but these are the Fairy Loot editions. At the very bottom, I've got The Hacienda and Vampires of El Norte, both by Isabel Cañas. I heard that her mashup of romance and horror is so well done, so I'm looking forward to reading those really soon. And then in the middle, I've got The Shepherd King duology by Rachel Gillig with One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns. Love that duology. I loved how unique the magic system was. I loved how eerie it was. And I am probably going to reread those pretty soon. Next to that, I've got The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. Loved it. Adored it. I kind of saw some of the things coming, but didn't see other things coming. But I love a time travel romance. That was so good. All the way to the right, I've got Masquerade by Oo Sangoyomi. Loved it. It's set in West Africa, and it's about colonialism and how the main character has to use her wits and build her strength to free herself and her people. So good. Beneath that, I've got a book duology that I needed as a child, and I'm so appreciative that I got it as an adult, and that is Ray Bear and Redemptor by Jordan Ifueko. So good. And I also enjoyed the spin-off, The Maid and the Crocodile, by her as well. Underneath that, I've got my Sara El Arifi collection. I've read The Final Strife, started The Battle Drum, but I need to finish that, as well as The Ending Fire. But I also read Feybound, and I liked it when I read it, but I felt like the more I thought about it, the more I was thinking that there were some issues that I hadn't really considered while I was reading. And I haven't read the greatest reviews for Cursebound, but I'm going to keep going because I love her and her work, and she has a Cleopatra retelling coming out soon, so I'll be looking forward to that as well. And on this shelf, I've read a handful of these, but I need to get to the rest. At the very bottom to the left, I've got the Nameless Republic series by Suyi Davies Onkungbawa. It's a fantasy series with a unique magic system that's inspired by West Africa. So I've read Son of the Storm and Warrior of the Wind, so looking forward to the next book in that series. Above that, I've got Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. It's one of the few books of hers that I haven't read, and I wish that they could all be together, but I'm limited on space, so someday they'll be reunited. Above that, I've got Looking for Smoke and Champion of Fate. I need to get to both of those. I did enjoy You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Callum Bayron. It's like a sapphic summer slasher with like a really interesting villain when it all comes to a head. Above that, I've got Cinderella is Dead by her as well. I haven't quite gotten to that one yet. That's going to be read really soon. Above those, I've got The Deep and Model Home by River Solomon. Really looking forward to reading both of those. I did start The Deep, but I haven't quite finished that one yet. And at the very top, I've got Graveyard Shift by Emma Rio. And to the right, we've got some books that I enjoyed and some that I need to get to. I haven't read A Strange and Stubborn Endurance nor All the Hidden Paths by Foz Meadows, but I've heard really good things. I did enjoy To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Monique Blackgoose. It's academia. It's a steampunk world where it is about an indigenous character who is coming to terms with colonizers. It's fantasy, so there are dragons, and you see them almost right away, which is not always the case with dragon books, so I appreciated that. Next to that, we've got the classic The Giver. I read that way back in the day, but I want to reread that soon. And I've got Most Ardently by Gabe Cole Novoa. It's a Pride and Prejudice remix where Elizabeth Bennet is not Elizabeth at all, but a trans man named Oliver. And I really enjoyed the spin on that and how it was set in the Regency time. And it was really eye-opening because there were trans people back then, and this was a great showing of what they had to go through. The Last Blood Carver by Vanessa Lay. Haven't gotten to that just yet. I need to read So Let Them Burn by Camilla Cole really soon. This is another dragon book, and the second half of the duology comes out this year, so I'm behind. Next to that, I've got She Who Became the Sun and He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Parker Chan. This is a complete duology. It's inspired by Mulan. All the way to the right, I've got A Benny Song by P. Djeli Clark. This is one of his YA stories, so I need to read that. I've been wanting to read that with my kids, but they never want to sit down with me, so I'm going to blame them on that one. And at the very top, I've got The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. I've heard really good things about this series. I need to get to that. And at the very top, I've got Dark Water Daughter by H.M. Long. In my last vlog, I mentioned that I'm going to be reading that soon, and I'm not a liar. On this bottom shelf, there's not much rhyme or reason. It's just some overflow, but I've got Crazy Rich Asians and Lies and Weddings, both by Kevin Kwan. I've got The Foxglove King and The Hemlock Queen, both by Hannah Witten. I've heard really good things about that series, so I need to get to that. Next up, I've got Spark of the Everflame and Glow of the Everflame by Penn Cole. That was gifted to me, and I've heard that those are good as well. Next to that, I've got I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. I haven't read The Mercy of the Gods by James S.A. Corey, nor have I gotten to The Blighted Stars by Megan O'Keefe, but I've heard that those are both really good. I need to get to Where Sleeping Girls Lie, as well as I Feed Her to the Beast and the Beast is Me. I don't know why I haven't read that yet. That's so intriguing to me. It's like horror, but like with ballet, set in like New York City and like the Undercity. I need to get to that really soon. And then to the right of that, I've got The Sixth World Duology by Rebecca Roanhorse with Trail of Lightning and Storm of Locusts. I've got The Palace of Eros by Carl Del Robertis, as well as Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young, and my standard editions of Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, because the ones at the very top are Alcrate. Just taking a brief intermission, I didn't realize how many books I have. I have 2 more shelves, in stacks, in carts. I'm exhausted. And we're back at the top. On the left, I've got some personal classics from my adolescence. The Looking Glass Wars series, starting with The Looking Glass Wars, Seeing Red, and Arch Enemy by Frank Better. This is such an underrated series. It's a retelling of Alice in Wonderland, where she is from Wonderland and she was pulled to our Earth. Above that, we've got The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. I've got The Hobbit above that and The Silmarillion. Very top, I've got The Adventures of Tom Bombadil. This is the only one out of this entire stack that I haven't read. I was gifted that by William Morrow, so I need to read that soon. In the center, I've got the Illustrated Gormenghast trilogy by Mervyn Peake. I haven't read this yet, but I've heard really good things. And then next to that, I've got Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. I'm scared to read Pachinko, but I need to read it soon. All the way to the right, I've got some books that radicalized me as a kid. I've got The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay. I read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I think in 2023 or 2024. Really enjoyed that one as well. And I feel like the movie didn't do the book any justice as far as like the sickening inner monologue of Snow, and I felt like that needed to be translated better. But other than that, I liked the movie. And at the very bottom, I've got The Undead Truth of Us and The Dark Place, both by Brittany S. Lewis. I need to read those. I'm also looking forward to her new book, Blood Moon, that comes out in August. Above that, I've got A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson, and I did read that one and enjoyed it. And at the very top, I've got Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. Loved it. I love that book so much. And at the very top, I've got Erasure by Percival Everett that I need to get to as well. This shelf is a collection of favorites and books that I know will be favorites. So aside from the 3 on the left, I've read all of them. I enjoyed The Rage of Dragons and The Fires of Vengeance by Evan Winter. I Will Fight Somebody for Tao. That poor boy, he needs help. Psychological, physical help, all the help he can get. Speaking of someone who needs psychological help, Hilo. I love the Rebound Saga by Fonda Lee, starting with Jade City, Jade War, and Jade Legacy. I loved how this series spanned decades, and we got to see how a family became a larger family and how all of those things unfolded for them. Above that, I've got A Master of Jin by P. Djeli Clark. I enjoyed this steampunk mystery fantasy world, and I really liked how there was like an actual Department of Magic. At the very top, I've got The Dead Cattails Assassins by P. Djeli Clark as well. I really enjoyed that novella. It was so witty. I loved the banter, and I loved how there was mythology that was thrown in there. I wasn't quite expecting that. To the right, I've got The City of Brass The Kingdom of Copper and the Empire of Gold, the David Bow trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty, as well as the accompanying novella, The River of Silver, with short stories that are from before, during, and after the series. I love The Adventures of Amin al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty as well, and how it's adjacent to this world. I think it takes place beforehand. Need to get to the love songs of W.E.B. Du Bois, as well as The Reformatory by Tana Ravidu, and Beloved by Toni Morrison. I obviously watched the movie when I was a kid, but I need to get to the book. I'm just afraid to read all three of these. This is another favorite shelf of mine. I've read most of these and enjoyed them. I love Ava Reid, so I've read A Study in Drowning. Hold on, why are those out of order? There isn't much order when it comes to my shelves, but the little bit of order that I have has to be maintained. So I'll like take a book down for a video and then I just won't pay attention and put it in the wrong spot so that everything's where it's supposed to be. At the very top, I've got Monstrilio by Gerardo Samano Cordova. I've heard really good things about that, but I haven't gotten to it just yet. Underneath that, I've got This Poison Heart and This Wicked Fate by Callan Bayron. I read both of those earlier this month. It's a complete duology and I really enjoyed it. It is a retelling of The Secret Garden, but there's ancestral and plant magic with mythology. So good. Beneath that, I've got my Ava Reid collection, so A Study in Drowning, Lady Macbeth, Juniper and Thorn, and The Wolf and the Woodsman. Of these four, the only one that I haven't read is Juniper and Thorn. Wolf and the Woodsman was okay, but I really enjoyed Lady Macbeth and A Study in Drowning, and I did read an arc of Fable for the End of the World, and I enjoyed that one as well. At the very bottom, I've got Madeline Miller's mythology retellings with Circe and The Song of Achilles. I know that The Song of Achilles is everybody's baby. I liked it, but I really enjoyed Circe. In the middle, I've got my Satis Fiction edition of Lore of the Wilds by Annalise Sabrana. So good, and I'm so looking forward to Lore of the Tides that comes out this year. Next to that, I've got 2 Alexis Henderson books. I've read The Year of the Witching, which was really good, but I haven't quite gotten to House of Hunger just yet. And next to that, I've got my V.E. Schwab collection with a random T. Kingfisher book at the top. But I've read Vicious and Vengeful, enjoyed both of those. I adored The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I haven't gotten to the Darker Shade of Magic series or The Fragile Threads of Power just yet, but I did like Gallant, and I adored Nettle and Bone also. Starting with Blood Debts and Blood Justice by Terry J. Benton Walker. I love this series. I hope that we get the rest of them. I think that he has 5 books planned, but it's set in New Orleans. There are different sects of witches and vampires, other type of supernatural beings. It's so good. It follows 2 twins as they are trying to uncover their secrets of their family and come into their power. I haven't gotten to the Gilded Ones just yet. I want to get to that really soon by Namina Forna. So that's the Gilded Ones, the Merciless Ones, and the Eternal Ones. I've heard really good things about the Ballad of Jacoti Delahaye by Brioni Cameron. It's like pirates set in the Caribbean. I love The Blood Trials by Annie Davenport. This is the first book in the Blood Gift duology. I have the Blood Gift somewhere, but like I said before, I think it's just a matter of like not having enough space because it's bigger than Medusa's Sisters by Lauren J. Hebert, so I couldn't fit it in this stack, but I'm looking forward to that one as well. In the middle, I've got The City in Glass by Nevo. I've heard really good things. I need to get to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies and Map of the Other Lands. I know that I'm going to love it. There's just so many books that I haven't gotten a chance to get to them yet. Adore Pet and Better by Kweki Emezi. Such important reads. And all the way to the right, I've got my bindery books, and that's Inferno's Air by Tiffany Wong, and The Sky Bled by S. Hati, Strange Beasts by Susan J. Morris, and House of Frank by Kay Sinclair. I adored all of these books. I am also a bindery tastemaker, and I hope that one day a book that I'm able to publish by an author will be on this shelf as well. And long, long ago, before I was on Book Talk, I read a lot of Holly Black. So this is my Holly Black shelf, starting with The Book of Night, Modern Day Fairy Tales, The Darkest Part of the Forest, Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, The Queen of Nothing, How the King of Elfheim Learned to Hate Stories, The Stolen Heir, and The Prisoner's Throne. So I think the only 2 of all of these books that I've read after I started Book Talk is the Stolen Heir duology. So I really liked The Return to Elfheim. To the left, I've got The Bloodsworn Saga by John Gwynne with The Shadow of the Gods, The Hunger of the Gods, and The Fury of the Gods. I soft DNF The Hunger of the Gods just because I had a lot going on. I was reading a lot at the end of the year, but I plan to jump back into that soon and finish that and then get into The Fury of the Gods. And I need to get to the Burning Kingdoms trilogy by Tasha Suri. I don't know what's taking me so long, but these books are stunning and I can't wait to jump in. And at the very top, I've got the Horses of Fire duology by A.D. Rhine, and this is a feminist retelling of the Iliad, and I love it so much. I love how it's from all the perspective of the women and how mythology is tied in as well. So good. I've read Horses of Fire, but I haven't got to Daughters of Bronze just yet. And we're almost done with the 3 big shelves that I've got here. At the very bottom, I've got my Avatar collection with the Rise of Kyoshi, the Shadow of Kyoshi. Kyoshi is my favorite Avatar, so I love that duology. I haven't gotten to the Dawn of Yangchen or the Legacy of Yangchen just yet, and I know that Roku has one, so I need to get to that one too. Above that, I've got If Shakespeare Was an Auntie trilogy by Nisha Sharma with Dating Dr. Dill, Tastes Like Shocker, and Marriage and Masti. I read these in like a week. These were so much fun and so good. Above that, I've got This Is Why They Hate Us by Erin Acevez. I need to get to that soon, as well as The Hate You Give. To the left, I've got Beasts of Prey, Beast of Ruin, and Beast of War by Ayana Gray. Haven't gotten to those just yet. I've also got Wish of the Wicked and Iron Widow. I need to read those really soon, but I did love The Sunbearer Trials by Aidan Thomas, as well as A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. And to the very left of those, I've got The Wind on Her Tongue. I haven't read this yet because it's the second book in the series, so I need to grab the first book. I was gifted this one. And then I want to also get to God Killer and Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner, as well as The Black Heart Man by Nalo Hopkinson. And then at the very top of the shelf, there are more books. I don't know how this is standing. Thank God I have it like nailed to the wall. But I've got some books by Stephanie Garber up here, another edition of Yellow Face, The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzon. I've got The Court of Wanderers by Rin Chipeco. I don't know where my Silver Under Nightfall is. It's somewhere. I've got Blood Like Magic and Blood Like Fate by Lucille Sambury, standard edition of Lady Macbeth by Ava Reid, and To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. Over here, I've got a stack of romance. I was accidentally sent Icebreaker and Wildfire by Hannah Grace by Fairy Loot. I don't know how that happened, but I have them there. I've got Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. And then I've got my Mead Mishap series that I love so much by Kimberly Lemming. I've got That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, The Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion and a Werewolf, and That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Human. I've also got the indie covers of those as well, so let me know if you guys want to see those. I can show you guys those in another video. With that, I've got some Allie Hazelwood with Check and Mate. I've got Bride somewhere. I think it's on another stack up here. And then I've got The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy and The Undermining of Twyla and Frank by Megan Bannon. I haven't read either of those. I've got another edition of That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, because I think the ones that are at the bottom are status fiction. So that's why I've got duplicates there. And then I've got Howl's Moving Castle as well. I've got some more copies of Black Sun, Fevered Star, and Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse, some Rebecca Ross titles, Divine Rivals, and Ruthless Vows. I read Divine Rivals, liked it, haven't gotten to Ruthless Vows yet. Some Veronica Roth up here, Chosen Ones, and then 2 editions of Poster Girl, and then some collections of other stuff that I've had for a while. Behind this, which is Far Sector by N.K. Jemisin and Jamal Campbell, who is the illustrator, I've got some stuff. I think I've got, I don't know if I like moving it. I'll show you guys another time. I'm lazy. I don't want to do it. I've got We Hunt the Flame back here, and then Keanu Reeves' book, and then I've got Finnick and the Rook, I think, and A Dark and Drowning Tide. Oh, I also had an edition of that at the bottom. I don't think I mentioned it. And some other books here as well that I like. I need to get to. Got Lake Lore, Markless, Bride, which I mentioned earlier, Witch King by Martha Wells, and Son of Blood and Ruin I need to get to, which is like a Zorro retelling. I've got this book here that I need to read, Be a Revolution, some other paperback editions of books that I showed you before, and then my Bridgerton collection. But I'll show you like my toys. I've got the Lorax, I've got Yusuke over here, Baymax, Spider-Punk, I've got, who is that? Donatello as a Star Trek person. I was a huge Kimberly Power Ranger girly back in the day. Love Miraculous, that's good. Got some Science Fiction candles here. The top of my bin from Wicked. Jon Stewart next to Sojourner Mullen. Some stuff from Shelves in the City, TikTok Year Review Party. And then I've got Appa, Owlman, Batman, this girl from Toy Story that my son had me put here, R2-D2. I've got a couple of Appas. I'm tired of digging Grandpa. Ugh. I've also got carts, but those are madness. I'm not showing you guys those on this video. Let me know if you guys want to see those another time, but there is one more shelf that I feel like I have to show you. All right, so this is a shelf that I've got above my desk, and I've also got some books at my desk, so let's go ahead and jump into these. So if you know anything about me, you know I've been obsessed with Wicked forever, since I was like 16 years old, and I got the solo popular, and my choir director gave me the soundtrack to learn how to sing like Christian channel with, and I never gave it back. So sorry, Mr. Forbes. But I've got my Wicked years collection here, as well as the 25th anniversary edition of Wicked. I've also got my Arc of Elfie by Gregory Maguire that comes out this year in March. I've got my little cup there, my popcorn bucket. This is something that my son asked for Christmas, and it was just going to end up at the bottom of his Lego bin, and I was just like, no, I'll take that. As well as my vinyl of the musical. Can't wait for part 2. Over here, I've got Spice Road by Maya Ibrahim, Tender Beasts, and Delicious Monsters by LaSalle Sambury. I need to get to Tender Beasts really soon, but I loved Delicious Monsters. It's dual timeline, it's horror, it's like difficult family dynamics, relationships with mothers, so good. I've got my copy of The Secret Garden here. I have my signed copy of A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. Shout out to Shelves in the City. Above that, I've got a copy of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. How High We Go in the Dark. I need to get to that by Sequoia Nagamatsu, as well as When Among Crows by Veronica Roth. And this next shelf behind Glinda's wand is some of my special editions with the sprayed or stenciled edges out. I've got The Bone Season, The Phoenix Keeper, The Honey Witch, Priory of the Orange Tree, A Day of Fallen Night, Hamadog Luck, A Song of Silver Flame, Feybound, Goddess of the River, Sleep Like Death, A Feather So Black, For She Is Wrath, The Gods Below, The Adventures of Amin al-Sarafi, and Air. And I impressed myself with knowing that. I mean, I feel like the edges kind of give it away. And then to the right of that, I've got some candles, but I've got my alphabet broom. I couldn't have the wand without the broom. And then here I've got some favorites, as well as some arcs that I just have to have on display because they're my favorites. But I've got my indie version of The Sword of Kaigan by Emma Wang, my paperback edition of This Is How You Lose a Time War, and I only am mentioning that as paperback because I'm a hardcover girly and I am having so much trouble finding the hardcover of that, and I feel some type of way. Beneath that, I've got The Truth of Aleke and The Lies of Ujungo by Moses Osei Utomi. On my last blog, I mentioned that I'm reading those really soon. Ring Shot by P. Jelly Clark, Freshwater by Akweke Emezi, love those, and my paperbacks of the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. Over here, I've got my Arc of the City in Glass by Niveau, as well as The River Has Roots by Amal El-Motar. I need to jump into that really soon, maybe this weekend. I've got my arcs of Watermoon, Lady Macbeth, Fable for the End of the World, Januaries, my indie copy of The Atlas 6 by Olivie Blake, as well as Fairy Tales of the Macabre by her as well. I've got my Arc of Babel, of Yellowface, of Katabasis, of Immortal by Sulin Chan, Death of the Author by Nadia Korafor, of Blood Over Brighthaven by Emma Wang, of A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon, and Mbessa, Chosen of the Wolf by C.L. Clark. If you're still here, you are a real one, but we're almost done. So all the way to the left, I've got the Tea Dragon Society series, and I adore them. I have like the big huge ones so I can read those with my boys. Next to that, I've got the Teller of Small Fortunes, and I've got an edition of The Prince of Egypt that I've had since I was a kid. At the bottom of this stack, I've got Can't Spill Treason Without Tea and A Pirate's Life for Tea by Rebecca Thorne, The Moth Keeper by Kay O'Neill, and The Haunting of Tramcar 15, and The Black God's Drums, both by P. Jelly Clark, as well as My Neighbor Totoro. And then right above that, I've got A Phoenix First Must Burn, and What We Fed to the Manticore by Talia Lakshmi Koluri. This one's so good. It's a collection of short stories from the perspective of animals about their relationships with us humans. Above that, I've got In the Shadow of the Fall by Toby Ongundaran. The second part of this duology just came out this past week, so I need to grab that. And above that, I've got A Psalm for the Wild-Built and A Prayer for the Crowned Shy by Becky Chambers. Love those. I've got stacks of books and book carts and books just in every nook and cranny, so maybe I'll get to those in a part 2 someday. But for now, this was my bookshelf tour. Once again, if you guys are here at the end of my video, I appreciate you so much. I appreciate you on this journey as I unpack the madness that is my organization of my shelves, as well as trying to really hone in on what I need to read next and keep myself accountable, because by the end of 2025, I want to have every book that I own physically to be read, because it only makes sense. If I read 100 books a year, there's no reason that that shouldn't be the case. So thank you guys so much so far. And let me know in the comments if there are any books that you guys saw that you enjoy, or any books that you think that I should grab. I'm doing better this year. I'm not just picking up books anytime. But if there's a book that you feel like I need to have in my collection, let me know. Thanks, guys.